Hello and welcome. Today we'll be discussing a set of questions based on Current Affairs 2020 Economy and Banking Concepts Test 65. So let us straight away move to the first question. The first question says, which among the following institutions has launched the COVID-19 Technology Access Pool (CTAP), an initiative aimed at making vaccines, tests, treatments, and other health technologies to fight COVID-19 accessible to all? Now, obviously, the answer is highlighted in bold, and the answer is World Health Organization (WHO). So you can mark this answer, World Health Organization (WHO). But when you encounter such a question, what are the various things that you need to understand as far as your preparation for such a concept is concerned? So let us first discuss what is this technology access pool all about. So we all know we are going through a pandemic in the current times. The world is facing a crisis as a result of this issue of COVID-19. Now, there are two, three things that we need to understand to be able to appreciate technology access pool. One is the initiative again by WHO called as Solidarity Call to Action. Please write it down. Solidarity. Solidarity. What does it mean? In Hindi, it means Sadbhavna. Solidarity Call to Action. Now, having written this, what do you mean by this? WHO has asked the governments of various countries to voluntarily pledge resources in terms of sharing of knowledge, intellectual property, any other research that has been carried out, so that any vaccines or tests can be made available to the low and middle income countries. So this initiative is called as Solidarity Call to Action. There is another institute, it is a UN backed institute called as the Medicines Patent Pool. Please write it down as well. Medicines Patent Pool. Medicines Patent Pool. PATENT, patent. Medicines Patent Pool, MPP. So, what is this organization do? So, this medicines patent pool has already been doing some efforts with regards to making healthcare accessible to all, especially in the low income countries for diseases like HIV, hepatitis C, tuberculosis. So, given that this particular organization already has some expertise in making sure that vaccines are accessible to the low and middle income countries, this, along with the solidarity call to action, combined together will give a one combined solution towards solving this issue of accessibility of COVID-19 vaccines and tests across all countries. So this CTAP will compile in one place the pledges of commitment of all such countries with the help of already existing mechanisms like medicines patent pool. So what are some of the questions that might come? A direct question might be solidarity call to action is an initiative by and so on. So I hope this much information with regards to this particular technology access pool is sufficient. Now, what are the various other things that we are expected to learn as far as WHO is concerned? So there is a chance that some of these things might be a repetition for you, and these might have been covered in some of the previous sessions. Doesn't matter. It will act as a good revision tool for you, and in case that has not been covered earlier, it will serve as a good pointer for you to prepare well for your exam. So let us discuss some basic pointers about WHO, World Health Organization. So the first thing that you are expected to note down is when was it founded? So WHO was founded on April 7, 1948. Please write it down. April 7, 1948. And this particular date, April 7, is also significant in the sense that the World Health Day is celebrated on April 7. Please write it down. April 7 is celebrated as the World Health Day. So this is about the foundation. Then with regards to headquarters, please write down where are the headquarters located. The headquarters are located in Geneva, in Geneva, Switzerland. The headquarters of WHO located in Geneva, Switzerland. Geneva, Switzerland. It is a specialized agency of the United Nations. Please write this down. Specialized agency of the United Nations. Now, what do you understand by specialized agency of United Nations? Nations was formed after the Second World War. The primary objective of maintaining the international peace in 1945, October 24th, 1945, and some institutions were already created before United Nations, some after this, but then United Nations started taking all these institutions under its umbrella, and it also created some other institutions as well through its different organs. So there are five principal organs of United Nations. Five principal organs of United Nations. We don't need to cover all the five organs in detail in this session particularly, but among them, effectively there were six earlier. There was a trusteeship council which has now suspended its operations since 1994. So effectively there are five organs now. So we don't need to cover all these five organs, but there is one organ which is pretty important in this, as far as this discussion is concerned, which is the United Nations Economic and Social Council. Please write it down. United Nations Economic and Social Council. So if you remove the UN part, it is sometimes abbreviated as ECOSOC, ECOSOC, ECOSOC. So under this particular organ, there are 15 different specialized agencies of United Nations. 15, 1 5. 15, 1 5, 15 different specialized agencies of United Nations. One of them being WHO, the others being Food and Agricultural Organization, International Labour Organization, World Bank, IMF. Some people might feel, sir, World Bank and IMF are autonomous. In fact, most of these are autonomous, but they are affiliated under the United Nations system overall. So all these organizations that you hear, FAO, ILO, World Bank, IMF, World Intellectual Property Organization, all these are specialized agencies of the United Nations. So this much information with regards to the basic structure of WHO is sufficient. The Economic and Social Council is a parent body. Under this there are specialized agencies. Then there are special funds and programs which are separate from these specialized agencies. For example, the second option, UNICEF, is a fund. Previously the full form used to be United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund. It was formed in 1946. You can write this down. Full form of UNICEF. It is not a specialized agency, it is a special fund. So funds and programs are slightly different. They come under the second organ, General Assembly. So ECOSOC does not oversee the operations, it is a General Assembly. Anyways, that's not very important. UNICEF full form previously was United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, but now it is simply called as United Nations Children's Fund. United Nations Children's Fund. Please write it down. United Nations Children's Fund. This was established way back in 1946. Fine. So United Nations Children's Fund is a special program specifically dedicated for vaccinations of children, ensuring that malnutrition does not happen in most parts of the world, and so on. So different objectives of this particular children's fund. Let's come back to WHO. So WHO, we have understood the basic structure of the principal organs of UN and how does WHO fit into that. Then WHO has two important decision making bodies. One is the World Health Assembly. Please write it down. This is again important. World Health Assembly. I'll tell you why this is important. World Health Assembly, and the second is the Executive Board. Second is the Executive Board. So there are two important decision making bodies under WHO. One is the World Health Assembly. The World Health Assembly has all the 194 member states as partners. World Health Assembly has all the 194 member states as partners, whereas the Executive Board has only 34 members representing broader regions. So why is this particular detailed discussion important? Because recently an Indian has been appointed as a chairperson of the executive board of WHO. Can you guess who that person is? Chairperson of the executive board of the World Health Organization. He is Mr. Harshvardhan. Please write it down. Recently appointed chairman of the executive board of WHO. He is Mr. Harshvardhan. Mr. Harshvardhan. He is a Health Minister of India, Minister of Health and Family Welfare in India. So he has been appointed as a chairperson. Now, what else is it that you are expected to know about WHO? I'm sure you already know the name of the Director General. I hope you already know the name of Director General. Who is he? He is, yes, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus. So I'm pretty sure you have heard this name quite often in the past few months. Just a repetition, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus. An interesting question is, which country does he belong to? So he belongs to Ethiopia. Please write it down. Ethiopia. Ethiopia. Fine. So this much information I believe is sufficient as far as this particular body, World Health Organization, is concerned. Now let's quickly have a look at some of the other bodies as well. For example, the first option talks about World Economic Forum here, WEF. So World Economic Forum was started by a German engineer and economist, Klaus Schwab. Please write down the spelling and the full name. Klaus, Klaus Schwab, SCHWAB. I'll repeat, SCHWAB. So this was started by a German engineer as well as an economist, Klaus Schwab. In 1987, it was given this particular name, World Economic Forum. Previously, it used to be called as the European Management Forum, but this much detail is not required. Just remember, World Economic Forum annual meeting is very popular. So they have this annual meeting of World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Please write this down. Annual meeting of World Economic Forum, where economic and business leaders from all over the world gather for a symposium of sorts. There is this program for young leadership. Then there are different themes like globalization 4.0, what's the future like, and so on. So it's a pretty big event, and all the important world leaders come down to this place called Davos. Interestingly, the headquarter is not Davos. So WEF, World Economic Forum, is headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland, but the annual meeting typically happens in Davos. So just remember this with regards to WEF. Klaus Schwab is the founder. It's a non-governmental organization. Annual meeting happens in Davos. UNICEF we have already discussed. Let's discuss the remaining two, World Bank and IMF. So I'm sure you already know some bit of information about World Bank and IMF. This was created during the Bretton Woods Conference. So very common popular question comes. Bretton Woods Conference is associated with the creation of which two world bodies? Bretton Woods, Bretton, Bretton Woods. It's a place in New Hampshire, United States, where this conference was held. That's why it's called as Bretton Woods Conference. Officially, it was called as United Nations Economic and Monetary Conference. Doesn't matter. Just remember this part. World Bank and IMF related to Bretton Woods, Bretton, Bretton Woods Conference. They also come under the aegis of United Nations system overall, although they are almost autonomous. They have nothing to do with United Nations per se, but they come under the umbrella of the specialized agencies of UN. So what does World Bank do? World Bank gives developmental loans to countries. The headquarters are located in Washington DC, where this Bretton Woods conference happened. Washington DC, headquarters of World Bank. Even the headquarters of IMF are located in Washington DC. Headquarters of IMF again located in Washington DC. World Bank, as I said, gives developmental loans. Who is the president of World Bank? He is currently David Malpass. David, D-A-V-I-D, David Malpass, president of World Bank, David Malpass. One important name that you are expected to remember is with regards to MD and CEO, Managing Director and CEO of World Bank. She is an Indian. She is Anshula Kant. Anshula Kant. Please write down the name. Anshula Kant. And there is another important post which is a Chief Economist of World Bank. Chief Economist of World Bank. Please write down the name. Carmen Reinhart. Carmen Reinhart. She's a Chief Economist. Carmen Reinhart. C-A-R-M-E-N. C-A-R-M-E-N. Carmen Reinhart. R-E-I-N-H-A-R-T. Carmen Reinhart. This is about World Bank, the president, the MD and CEO, and the chief economist. These are the three important names that you need to remember. The second organization that we were discussing was IMF, International Monetary Fund. International Monetary Fund. So this particular institution deals with balance of payment crisis of the different countries of the world. So balance of payment. So in case there is some issue, for example, India faced a balance of payment crisis in 1991. Our forex reserves had dropped to almost $1 billion. Currently, there is very good news. India's forex reserves have reached an all-time high of more than $500 billion. So you can imagine the comparison. Currently, our forex reserves are more than $500 billion, and during 1991, our forex reserves had dropped to almost less than $1 billion. We could not have imported crude oil for more than 3 weeks. Such was the crisis during the time of 1991. As a result, our liberalization and globalization process was forced. So you might have heard of LPG, liberalization, privatization, globalization. It was more of forced liberalization because we did not have sufficient foreign currency to purchase oil or in general, for that matter, anything with regards to imports. Some students have this confusion. We can print money. Yes, we can, but we can print our own currency only. So RBI can print rupees as much as it wants, even if it leads to inflation. That's within the power of RBI and the government. But can the RBI print dollars? No. Is there a nodal exchange where people will be willing to take rupees and convert them to dollars and give it to India? No. So you might say, sir, we have exchanged rupees, and there are agencies like Thomas Cook. There are banks. When we go to banks, they can. But all these banks are controlled by RBI. Is there an international country or a office which will be willing to take rupees and give dollars to India? No, because rupee is useless outside of India. All the international transactions happen typically in US dollars or some other relevant currencies. So, to be able to purchase for our imports, we need forex reserves, and the sources for forex reserves are obviously exports, and therefore exports are encouraged. Second are foreign direct investments or foreign institutional investments. So, let us not go into details of balance of payment, current account, and capital account, but in general, just understand that IMF deals with all these issues of countries of the world, and it also has something called SDR, special drawing rights, which are supplementary currencies. They are not currencies per se, they are units of exchange. But again, that is slightly too technical at this point in time. Just understand they are supplementary currencies by IMF. Supplementary currencies. One assignment that I am giving you in this regard is there are 5 currencies which form the basket of SDR. There are 5 currencies, international currencies, which form the basket of SDR. So please write down special drawing rights for IMF. You have to Google which are the 5 currencies that form the basket of this IMF SDR. So anything else that is important as far as IMF is concerned? Yes, Managing Director MD is Kristalina Georgieva. Please write down the name. This is important. Write it down. I'll give you time. Kristalina. In between, whatever discussions we had, some of them were more to do with stories, so you don't really need to make a note of them. But these names are very important as far as your exam is concerned. Please write them down. Kristalina. K starts with K. Kristalina. Kristalina Georgieva. Georgieva. Kristalina Georgieva. She is from Bulgaria. She is from Bulgaria. Previously, the MD was Christine Lagarde from France, but you don't need to remember that. So, Kristalina Georgieva from Bulgaria. There is another important Indian. So you can realize there are a lot of Indians occupying some very important positions in world multilateral institutions. So for IMF, we have the chief economist Geeta Gopinath. Please write down the name Geeta Gopinath. Geeta Gopinath. So I believe we have spent sufficient amount of time on this first question itself, but it was pretty broad. So this is a general advice. I'm sure you would have been getting similar advices across your sessions till now. That once you encounter a question, there can be multiple threads that you have to open and study, so that you are very well prepared. At in the beginning, it might feel slightly tedious, but over a period of time, this is the best way to remain connected to different sources of information. You'll be able to recall all this information if you prepare it along this in this manner. Fine. Let's move on to the next question then. So the next question is pretty easy, straightforward. Who emerged as the only cricketer in the world's top 10 list of highest earning athletes through sponsored Instagram posts during the lockdown? Answer is highlighted. Answer is Virat Kohli. So you can understand if there has to be a cricketer and the only cricketer that to highest earning, logically it should go to one of the most celebrated batsmen, captain of Indian cricket, Virat Kohli. Uh, what else do we need to know in this particular question? This particular survey was done by a company called Attain, ATTAIN. Please write this down, ATTAIN. And if Virat Kohli was the only cricketer, what was his rank? His rank was 6th. Please write this down as well. His rank was 6th in the list of top 10 highest earning athletes during lockdown. What was the period of lockdown that was counted? For international lockdown, it was counted from March 12 to May 14. March 12, March 12 to May 14th, 1 4. And one common obvious question that you might have is who was ranked the first? Who was ranked the first? So if cricketer was ranked at 6, then which sport could top the list? Obviously it is association football. So Cristiano Ronaldo, at the name Cristiano Ronaldo, topped the list of highest earning athletes. Cristiano Ronaldo, followed by Lionel Messi. It's not going to be too far behind. Lionel Messi. This is for specifically Instagram posts. Now, what other questions you are expected to prepare for this is one, who are the founders of Instagram? So, Instagram is a very, very popular app now. So, who are the founders of Instagram can be a good question. Please write down the names. Kevin Systrom, Kevin, Kevin Sys, Strom, Kevin Systrom, and Mike Krieger, Mike Krieger. Kevin Systrom and Mike Mike Krieger, Krieger, Krieger. Mike Krieger and Kevin Systrom were the founders. They founded Instagram way back in 2010, and then it was taken over by a technological giant, Facebook. So currently, Facebook owns Instagram. Facebook owns another social media app that I'm sure you must be aware of. Can you guess another famous social media app that is acquired by Facebook? Yes, WhatsApp. So Facebook also owns WhatsApp. So under the brand of Facebook, there is Instagram, there is WhatsApp, then there is Facebook Messenger, and recently Facebook also acquired a 9.9% stake in an Indian company. Can you name that company? Yes, Geo Platforms. So Facebook acquired a 9.9% stake. That was again during the time of lockdown. 9.9% stake in Geo Platforms, a subsidiary of RIL, Reliance Industries Limited, under Mukesh Ambani. So this was about Facebook. What else? Given that we have discussed some bit of information about Instagram and Facebook, Facebook is one of the big five technological giants. So you might hear about these names or the acronyms GAFAM, GAFAM. GAFA is for top four, And then you have Microsoft as well, and it is sometimes called as GAFAM. 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 This is an acronym. Please write it down. GAFAM. This is an acronym for the big five technology giants in the world. Big five technology giants in the world. You can easily guess the names of these five companies. G stands for Google. G stands for Google. Then A stands for Amazon. A stands for Amazon. Then F stands for Facebook. GAFAM. GAFAM. F stands for Facebook. Then there is again A, that stands for Apple. Apple. The last M is Microsoft. So Google, Amazon, then your Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft. The big five technology giants. Fine. Let's move on to the next question then. Which among the following nations bagged the right to host the Women's Asian Football Cup 2020? So answer is highlighted. It is India. So India has backed the right to host the Women's Asian Football Cup. Interestingly, India is also going to host the Women's World Cup, the Women's FIFA World Cup next year. That is for under 17 category. Please write this down. India will also host the under 17 Women's FIFA World Cup in 2021. Under 17 Women's FIFA World Cup to be hosted by India. India also hosted the Under 17 Men's FIFA World Cup in the year 2017. Under 17 Men's FIFA World Cup in the year 2017. So that these are good signs for Indian football. By the way, which is the leading body that manages football in India? Please write down the name AIFF, All India Football Federation. Please write down the name All India Football Federation. All India Football Federation. And who is the current president? Who is the current president? Current president is Mr. Praful Patel. Praful Patel. Praful Patel is an alumnus of the Sydenham College in Mumbai, a very famous college. He was also previously the Civil Aviation Minister of India. So Praful Patel is the president of All India Football Federation. What else that you are expected to know? This hosting rights, this India will be hosting for the second time as far as the Asian Football Cup is concerned. For the first time, India hosted way back in 1979. India hosted the first Asian Football Cup way back in 1979, and the FIFA Women's World Cup happened last year 2019 in France. It was won by United States. The Men's FIFA World Cup happened last time in 2018 in Russia, and France won it. So I'll go slightly slow here. Women's FIFA World Cup 2019 was hosted by France, and it was won by the United States of America, US. Noted. Then the FIFA World Cup 2018 men's happened in Russia. Happened in Russia, and it was won by France. It was won by France. The next men's FIFA World Cup is going to get hosted in Qatar. Qatar. The next men's FIFA World Cup is going to get hosted in 2022 in Qatar, and the next Women's FIFA World Cup is going to get hosted in the year 2023. The host is not yet decided. The host is not yet decided. Let's move on to the next question then. Which Indian origin film director has been appointed chairperson of the British Academy of Film and Television Arts? Answer is in front of you. Answer is option 2, Krishnendu Mazumdar. Krishnendu Mazumdar. Now, what else do you need to know? The latest edition 2020 was the 73rd British Academy of Film and Television Award ceremony. 73rd ceremony, and the best director went to Sam Mendes for the movie 1917. Please write it up. The movie also won the best film. Best film in these awards was won by 1917. 1917. Best film 1917. Best director Sam Mendes. Best director Sam Mendes. Sam Mendes. The most number of awards were also won by the same movie in 1917. There were 7 in number. Most number of awards by 1917. Total 7 awards. And most number of nominations were for the movie Joker. Movie Joker. Most number of nominations were for the movie Joker, 11. Fine. An assignment for you, small assignment. Please Google the best actor and the best actress as far as BAFTA awards are concerned. Best actor and best actress. Let's move on to the next question then. Which of the following institutions acts as a regulator for the pension sector? Now, this is one question where we'll spend quite some time in trying to understand all these different organizations and what are their roles and stuff. So, let us first understand the answer, which is PFRDA. I'll expect you to make notes as well for this question. So, PFRDA stands for Pension Fund and Regulatory Development Authority. So if you could have to make a logical guess, the question is about pension sector. Pension starts from C. Generally, regulating bodies have the core name available in them, and therefore PFRDA could be the answer. But then this is just a logical guess. I'll expect you to know exactly what this organization is, so that you don't require such smart thinking. You already know the answer, you can mark it. So PFRDA stands for Pension Fund Regulatory and Development Authority. It was founded in 2003. Write down. Founded in 2003. The current chairman, please write down the name, Supratim Bandyopadhyay. Current chairman, Supratim Bandyopadhyay. Bandyo, B-A-N-D-Y-O. B-A-N-D-Y-O. Padhyay, P-A-D-H-Y-A-Y. Supratim Bandyopadhyay. Fine. Headquartered in New Delhi. Headquartered in New Delhi. This PFRDA also is responsible for the creation of NPS, that is the National Pension System or the National Pension Scheme, where not just central government and state government employees will be eligible for this particular scheme. Even people in the unorganized sector can voluntarily opt for the pension scheme, National Pension Scheme. This also comes under PFRDA. What do you effectively mean by regulator? It acts as a watchdog for that particular sector, so that any issues in that particular sector could be removed, and if there are certain organizations that are not working properly, then they could be checked on, they could be suggested. There are certain norms, guidelines which have to be followed. So all these norms and guidelines are issued by the regulatory bodies, which all the insurance related companies, say for example if it's an insurance regulator, all the insurance related norms will have to be followed. If it's a pension regulator, all the pension related norms and protocols that have to be followed. So regulator you can simply understand as a watchdog for these agencies. So I believe this much information is sufficient as far as PFRDA is concerned. Next institution that we'll take up is IRDA, fifth option. This is Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority. Please write down the name. Full form, Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority. It was founded in 1999. Founded in 1999. Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority. Who is the current chairman? Mr. Subhash Chandra Kunthia. Please write down. Subhash Chandra Kunthia. Kunthia. Subhash Chandra Kunthia. And the headquarters are located in Hyderabad, Telangana. Hyderabad, Telangana. The headquarters are located in Hyderabad, Telangana. Fine. Then, so what does this particular regulatory body do? It regulates insurance in India. Insurance Regulatory Development Authority. So you might always see some protocols or guidelines whenever you see an ad from whenever you see an ad in the insurance sector. All this is regulated by IRDA. Then the next is SEBI. First option. Please write down the full form. Securities and Exchange Board of India. Securities and Exchange Board of India. This is the regulatory body for capital markets in India. All the stock markets, stock exchanges that you see, all these are regulated by SEBI. So if there is any issue, any complaint, SEBI is the body that deals with all those issues, complaints and disputes. Securities and Exchange Board of India, founded in 1992. Founded in 1992. Who's the current chairman? Is Mr. Ajay Tyagi, chairman of SEBI. Mr. Ajay Tyagi. Mr. Ajay Tyagi. Fine. Next is obviously RBI, and we can spend maybe a session of 2 hours or more on RBI itself. We'll keep our discussion very short and we'll move slightly faster because I'm expecting that you have already covered some bit of information about RBI. Nonetheless, RBI was founded April 1st, 1935, Reserve Bank of India. And I'll do a quick summary. I'm assuming that you know a lot of stuff already. Reserve Bank of India, April 1st, 1935. Interestingly, the first governor was not an Indian. He was Mr. Osborne Smith. Osborne Smith. The first governor was Indian to govern RBI was Mr. C.D. Deshmukh. C.D. Deshmukh. The current governor is Mr. Shaktikanta Das. Effectively, there are 4 deputy governors in RBI, but then currently, as of now, in June 20th, we have only 3 deputy governors. One deputy governor, Mr. N.S. Vishwanathan, has resigned and his office ended. Last day was 31st of March 2020. Mr. N.S. Vishwanathan, one of the deputy governors, resigned. The remaining 3 deputy governors, so I can understand I'm moving slightly fast here, then I'm assuming you already know this stuff. If you don't, it's high time that you remember names of deputy governors and at least the governor of RBI. So the 3 other deputy governors are Michael Patra, BP Kanungo, and Mr. M.K. Jain. So this was in brief about RBI, Reserve Bank of India. And next is CCI, Competition Commission of India. Competition Commission of India. Please write down Competition Commission of India. So what does this organization do? It is again a regulator. It regulates and checks whether there is fair play as far as businesses are concerned. When you say fair play, it ensures that the competition provides a level playing field for all the businesses in India, and there is no undue advantage taken by any particular business, and it does not lead to creation of something called monopoly. Monopoly would mean a single seller. So if there is a single seller, he would decide the price, and the prices could go very high. So to avoid this, there is this Competition Commission of India, which follows the MRTPC Act, Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act. So this was founded in 2003, headquartered is in New Delhi, and chairman is Mr. Ashok Gupta. Ashok Gupta. So for example, you might have heard of CCI slamming a penalty on BCCI with regards to IPL auctions and alleging that the auctions were not fair and they were discriminatory, and BCCI acted as it is a sole body and therefore decided the price arbitrarily. It slammed a penalty on Google some time back. So all these news that you come across is because there is a regulatory body called CCI, Competition Commission of India. So this much information is sufficient as far as this question is concerned. But there is one more important area that I'll want to cover here. All these are statutory bodies. Now this is slightly technical, but I'll expect you to understand all these technical terms because in future they are going to be very relevant. Statutory body. All these are statutory bodies. Now you might have heard other terms like non-statutory body. You might also have heard something called constitutional body. So now I'll discuss some bit of information about what do these three bodies mean. So write down the heading. First is constitutional bodies. Constitutional bodies. Just put a dash and write bodies that are mentioned in the constitution. Simple. Bodies mentioned in the constitution. Now we'll spend some time on trying to understand. So I want you to keep your pen down and just focus on what I'm sharing. So you understand we have one of the longest written constitutions in the world, and there are bodies which are already mentioned as part of the constitution. For example, the Election Commission of India. Is it mentioned in the constitution? Yes. And therefore, is it a constitutional body? Yes. So now a question arises, can we create constitutional bodies now? So obviously constitution was created way back. Is there a possibility to create a constitutional body which will have mention in our constitution? Yes. How? By amending the constitution. So if a constitutional body has to be created, the whole constitution has to be amended, and the constitution amendment deals with Article 368. So you'll have to use Article 368 of the Indian Constitution that allows our constitution to be amended. But there's an issue here. While you amend the constitution, any constitutional amendment has to be passed by a special majority, and therefore it is not as easy as passing a normal bill or act. It is not as easy as passing a normal bill and getting the president's assent and sealing it as an act. You will have to have special majority. Now, for this current discussion, we don't need to go into different types of majorities required in the parliament as per constitution. They are like simple majority or absolute majority or effective majority or special majority. Just simply understand special majority would mean it will be more strict in the sense that more than 50% people would not be just sufficient. You will also have to have a majority of 2/3 of the voting members who are present. So again, not required as far as your exam is concerned to be able to understand in such depths. But just understand that it is difficult to amend the constitution in the sense if you compare it with passing a normal bill. So when you can amend the constitution, you can create a constitutional body. What are the current examples of some constitutional bodies? You can write them down if you want. Election Commission of India, the Supreme Court, or the Central Vigilance Commission, or you might have heard of UPSC, Union Public Service Commission. All these are constitutional bodies. They are mentioned in the constitution. Recently there was an amendment, few years back there was an amendment with regards to giving constitutional status to National Commission for Backward Classes. National Commission for Backward Classes. Fine. So that is again a constitutional body now. That was an amendment and it was given constitutional status. So we have understood what constitutional bodies are, difficult to change, and that's why they have so much power and autonomy, because they cannot be changed easily. Their protocols and regulations cannot be changed easily, because you will have to again understand, amend the constitution, which is difficult. Now, second category of bodies that we need to understand are called as statutory bodies. Statutory bodies. Statutory bodies. What are statutory bodies? These are bodies created by passing a bill, by presenting a bill, and then passing a bill, getting a president's approval, and creation of an act. So examples can be SEBI. So SEBI was a body created by passing the SEBI Act of 1992, RBI, the RBI Act of 1934, and so on. So all these are passed through an act of parliament. So bodies that are created through an act of parliament are called as statutory body. Statutory body. Obviously, level of difficulty in terms of creation of these bodies is slightly less as compared to constitution, and therefore they can be created more frequently as and when governments or the parliament passes the bill. They can therefore change by acts of parliament as well. So if you have to change some provisions in a particular body, which is statutory body, parliament can pass a bill. If it passes a bill, it gets president assent, then it becomes an act and it can be changed accordingly. So this is statutory, second level. And the third is the non-statutory body. Non-statutory body. Now what do you mean by non-statutory body? This is passed by an executive resolution of the cabinet. Please write down non-statutory body passed by an executive resolution of the cabinet. So in simple terms, think of it like this, that there is a cabinet headed by the Prime Minister of the country. They will sit for a meeting, decide that a particular body has to be created, they will pass a resolution and the body will get created. Simple. Easy steps. Cabinet meeting headed by Prime Minister, deciding a creation of a body, passing a resolution, and boom, you have the body created. What are the examples of non-statutory bodies in India? A very famous example would be Niti Aayog, National Institution for Transforming India. National Institution for Transforming India. Who is the chairman? Ex officio chairman is the Prime Minister. So Niti Aayog is a non-statutory body. Erstwhile Planning Commission was a non-statutory body. So the advantage of having a non-statutory body is they can be changed easily. The president needs to sit with the cabinet, pass a resolution, and the body will get changed. The protocols will get changed, the name will get changed, and so on. So it's pretty easy. You don't need to amend the constitution. You don't need to pass bills in the parliament. You just need cabinet approval, headed by the prime minister himself. So these are non-statutory bodies. So I hope you have understood uh, the advantages and disadvantages. That is, the advantage obviously is easy creation. The disadvantage is it does not have all the powers that a constitutional body enjoys. Fine. So if tomorrow, you know, new government comes and there is a new prime minister, you might see Niti Aayog getting scrapped. That's a possibility. And the new prime minister might want to change the name or might want to change the entire Ayog itself. It's up to the next prime minister, whoever he or she be. So I believe this much information is very important as far as your preparation is concerned. Let's move to the next question. The FSCDC is an apex cover body dealing with macro-prudential and financial regularities in the entire financial sector in India. Expand FSGC. The answer is in front of you. It is option 2, Financial Stability and Development Council. Please understand that finance and economics are complex issues, and when they relate to a country as big and as diverse as India, the issues become even more prominent. And it is very difficult to regulate, control, and continuously monitor all these institutions so that they work efficiently and there are no loopholes in the system. Every system has loopholes, but for a country like India, these loopholes in the financial and economic sector are, you can say, quite a lot, and it is difficult to manage all of them in one go. Therefore, in 2008, Raghuram Rajan Committee, please write down, Raghuram Rajan Committee recommended the creation of an apex body that will be, let's say, one combined place trying to relate all issues among different regulatory agencies that are there in India. For example, in the previous slide, we covered regulating agencies like PFRDA, IRDA, SEBI, RBI can be considered a regulator for banks in India. So, all these regulating agencies can come together under one umbrella and it can be headed by the Minister of Finance. This was the recommendation of the Raghuram Rajan Committee in 2008, and in 2010, this particular apex body was formed. Is it a statutory body? No. So now we have understood what does this mean. So this previous information is going to help us immensely, as I said, in future as well. So FSDC is a non-statutory body, which means Prime Minister along with the cabinet passed a resolution, boom, FSDC got created. So this FSDC is headed by the Minister of Finance, ex officio Minister of Finance, and then there are chairmen of all these leading regulatory agencies. There are also members like the Finance Secretary. Who is a Finance Secretary? It's a very important post as far as India is concerned. He is the administrative head of the Finance Ministry. Finance Secretary is the administrative head of the Finance Ministry. Currently, that post is held by Mr. Ajay Bhushan Pandey. Mr. Ajay Bhushan Pandey. So, he is also considered to be the chief advisor to the Minister of Finance. Anyway, so all these people come together, a central organization that will overlook and oversee all the important issues plaguing the system. For example, we had the ILNFS crisis, and just before the crisis, this particular organization was given a credit rating of AAA. So imagine the kind of loopholes that are there in the economic and finance system in India. So this body is created and it performs all these uh, audits. Now, another important person with regards to this, who's a member of this FSDC, is a Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India. Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India. Another important name, please write it down, Mr. K.V. Subramaniam. Mr. K.V. Subramaniam, Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India. Previously was Mr. Arvind Subramaniam. And now he has been replaced by Mr. K.V. Subramaniam, Chief Economic Advisor. So I believe this much information is sufficient as far as this question is concerned. Let's move on to the next question. Which among the following statements are not true regarding the rural cooperative credit system in India? Answer is highlighted in option 4. PACS comes under the Banking Regulation Act 1949 and are regulated by the RBI. So we know the answer, but let us have some bit of discussion about this. So the rural cooperative credit system in India can be broadly divided under two categories: short-term and long-term. Short-term credit or long-term credit. The short-term credit can further be divided into three subcategories. Now among the three subcategories, two of them are visible on your slide, so I'll use this straight away. One is the PACS, which is the bottommost or the basic foundation level of this short-term credit system, rural cooperative credit system in India. Primary agricultural credit societies, they operate at the village level, as I said, the bottommost level, village level, and they are not regulated by the RBI. They do not come under the Banking Regulation Act. So just remember, three categories under the short-term cooperative credit system. One is the primary agricultural credit societies, and they are not regulated by the Banking Regulation Act. Just above them are central cooperative banks, CCBs. They operate at the district level and they come under the Banking Regulation Act. So only the primary agricultural credit societies. What do you mean by these credit societies, or what do you mean by cooperative credit system? These are credit societies helping the farmers attain credit. Basically, it would mean advances or loans for their agricultural activities, agricultural and allied activities. So central cooperative banks operate at the district level, and then there is a third level which is called as the state cooperative banks. You can write the acronym ST, T small here, STCBs. So CBs is like this, CB and then S for banks. So STCBs, state cooperative banks. So state cooperative banks are also under the Banking Regulation Act. Only the primary agricultural credit societies are not regulated by the RBI. So I believe this much information is sufficient as far as this question is concerned. Let's move on to the next question. Banks, financial institutions should frame their key policies by incorporating which of the following key elements? So I'm sure you have heard of something called KYC. If not, please write down the full form. KYC. Know your customer. Know your customer. And the know your customer norms, as suggested or recommended or mandated by the RBI, should contain these four parameters. The answer is obviously all of the above. So KYC norms for any bank or banking entity in India should contain all these four key elements. One is customer acceptance policy. All these are pretty easy to understand, so we'll spend some bit of time in trying to understand this. What do you mean by customer acceptance? Simply means there should be a clear, distinct policy as with regards to which particular set of persons can be accepted as customers. So if there are certain documents that are expected from a person to be accounted as a customer, if there are certain set of documents expected from a company to be accounted as a customer, then those norms should be clearly laid out, and there shouldn't be any bias with regards to bank deciding that this person can be a customer and the other person cannot be. So this is with regards to customer acceptance. You don't need to write anything of this down, just understand these KYC norms in general, and that should be sufficient. If required, please rewatch the video again. So customer identification procedure. So this is with regards to identifying and also verifying customers by using certain reliable information or documents and so on. So this is with regards to whether a bank or banking entity is able to identify those customers or not, and what are the various documents that they use with regards to the identification and verification process. The third is monitoring of transactions. This is very important. So included in KYC norms are monitoring of transactions, which means suppose you have a bank account, bank will generally not monitor anything as far as your transactions are concerned. But if there is any unusual activity, what do you mean unusual activity? Let's take an example. Suppose there is a salaried account, and every month typically the transactions happen to the tune of few thousands or let's say a lakh at best. Now suddenly one fine day, transactions of more than 5 cr or 10 cr or 8 cr happen. So this would be typically categorized as an unusual activity. I'm just giving you an example. So there are criteria laid down by the government to understand what constitutes unusual activity in a banking or a financial institution's account, and it is the responsibility of the bank to be able to monitor those transactions and report those transactions as required. The last is risk management. Risk management typically would deal with audit system, sufficient number of staff in the banking system to be able to do those audits, and also ensuring that KYC norms are properly followed. So you need a team who will do all these norms properly. So this is something that comes under risk management. So let's move on to the next question then. The transfer of financial resources from union government to the states takes through which of the following modes? Answer is only 1, 2 and 3, which means loans, tax sharing and grant in aids. These are three modes that are acceptable. International funding is not a part of sharing or transfer of financial resources. So there are few things that I want you to understand, and if required make notes as well. Who decides the financial relations between center and states? Who decides the financial relations between center and states? The answer is Finance Commission. Please write it down. Finance Commission. So Finance Commission handles the relations between the financial relations between central government and the state government. Currently, 15th Finance Commission is operational. 15th Finance Commission, headed by Mr. Nand Kishore Singh. Please write this down, and then I'll explain what does the Finance Commission do. 15th Finance Commission is operational, headed by Mr. Nand Kishore Singh. Nand Kishore Singh. So when you say financial relations, a very important part is the transfer of taxes collected by the central government to the states. So there are some categories of taxes that are collected by the central government, and it is the Finance Commission that decides how much share of this collected pool of taxes from the center will go to the states. So till last year, till 2019-20, the share was 42%. Previously, before the 14th Finance Commission, it was 32%. This was raised to 42%. The idea to decentralize the economy. But anyways, not important. Just remember this figure. 42% was till the year 2019-20. For the financial year 2020-21, this share has been reduced by 1 percentage points to 41%. 1 percentage point reduction to 41%. What does this mean? If the center collects 100 rupees as taxes, then 41 rupees will go to states, and the remaining 59 rupees will be taken by the center for its projects or expenditure. So why is this reduction in 1%? That is again an interesting question. This is because of revocation of Article 370 and creation of two union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. So the state of Jammu and Kashmir now has been converted into two union territories. So India now has 28 states. A lot of students commit mistake in this. 28 states and 9 union territories. Among those 9, two newly created union territories are Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and the Union Territory of Ladakh. So now, given that they are union territories, they are no more states. Earlier, the funding that used to go to J&K was approximately 0.85% of this share of taxes. So this Finance Commission now suggested for the next year that approximately 1% will be taken away. So even though it was 0.85, it expected that a lot more expenditure has to be incurred for the newly creation union territories, which will be taken care by the center, and therefore this reduction to states. So states will now only get 41%. Previously till last year they used to get 42% because of the creation of union territories of J&K and Ladakh. So This much information is sufficient as far as financial relations between central and states are concerned. So central governments obviously share taxes. Central government also give grants in aids. What are grant in aids? Typical transfer of money or resources as far as disaster management is concerned, relief packages are concerned. So all this money gets transferred from the central government to the states government. This is also a part. Obviously, they can also give loans, but international funding is not a part of the transfer of financial resources. Fine. Let's move on to the next question then. According to the Georgetown University's Institute for Women, Peace and Security, what is India's rank? So India's rank is highlighted. Answer is 133. Now we'll move slightly fast from here. Please write down the name of the country which was ranked 1. Answer is Norway. Answer is Norway. Norway was ranked first. Which was the country which was ranked last? It was Yemen. I don't need to tell you the rank because it is already there in the slide. 167 countries. So the rank for Yemen, the last country, is 167. Afghanistan was 166. Just for out of curiosity, Pakistan was 164. So India is 133rd, Pakistan is 164. As I said, Norway topped the list. Norway topped the list. Fine. This much I believe is sufficient for this question. Let's move on to the next question quickly. World Tsunami Awareness Day. Again, these are some bit of information which are just pieces of information. You can make a note, have a mental note if required, then we can move on. So answer is November 5. This is credited to Japan. So Japan is credited with the creation of World Tsunami Awareness Day, November 5. October 7 last year was celebrated as World Habitat Day, but it is not specifically on this date that World Habitat Day is celebrated. In general, the first Monday of October is celebrated as the World Habitat Day. First Monday of August. December 9 is celebrated as the International Day of Anti-Corruption. Yeah, International Anti-Corruption Day, December 9, celebrated by the United Nations. International Anti-Corruption Day. I have an assignment for you. Please Google Transparency International Corruption Index and identify India's rank, compare it with BRICS, compare it with the best ranked countries and so on. Transparency International Corruption Index. What is India's rank in corruption? December 9 is celebrated as International Anti-Corruption Day. November 5 we have already covered, World Tsunami Awareness Day. March 10 is celebrated as CISF Raising Day. CISF, Central Industrial Security Force, CISF, celebrated as Central Industrial Security Force Raising Day, March 10. March 10. And February 11 is celebrated as the World Unani Day. World Unani Day. So Unani is a form of medicine. World Unani Day. In fact, I'm sure you would have heard of Ayush Ministry or Ministry of Ayush. 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 Please write down the full form. It's a very important question that you must be aware about. Full form of Ayush. So Ayush, AYUSH. The Ministry of Ayush in India. Ayush stands for, A stands for Ayurved. A stands for Ayurved. The Y stands for Yoga and Naturopathy. Yoga and Naturopathy. I want you to write slightly fast. Direct bit of information you can easily digest. So Ayush, A stands for Ayurved, Y stands for Yoga and Naturopathy, U stands for Unani. So we said February 11 is celebrated as World Unani Day. U stands for Unani. Then S stands for Siddha, SIDDHA, Siddha. And H stands for Homeopathy. Last H stands for Homeopathy. So Ayurveda, Yoga and Naturopathy, Unani, Siddha and Homeopathy. This is the full form of Ayush. Let's move on to the next question then. Which of the following persons has claimed the 2019 Japan Open title? Answer is in front of you. Answer is Novak Djokovic. Not much information to share here. Just remember Roger Federer topped the list with regards to the highest paid athletes in terms of their yearly salaries by Forbes. Just remember this name, Roger Federer, highest paid athletes for the last year 2020, published by Forbes. This is the latest ranking. Roger Federer has topped the list. Also, Roger Federer holds a record for the most number of Grand Slam titles, 20. Roger Federer, 20, currently holds the most number of Grand Slam titles, followed by Rafael Nadal. He holds 19. Djokovic has 17. Fine. So let's move on to the next question. Abiy Ahmed, who won the 2019 Nobel Peace Prize, is the incumbent Prime Minister of, answer is in front of you, Ethiopia. Ethiopia should also ring a bell. In this session itself, we covered a very important person who is in news recently, who also belongs to Ethiopia. Yes, you are right. So Ethiopia is here, Eritrea is here, and why was he given this Nobel Prize? Because these two neighboring countries were involved in a 2-decade-long war. The war started back in early 2000s, and for the past 20 years, these two countries were at war. And this particular prime minister ensured that he became the prime minister, I guess, in around 2017, and within 3 years, he was able to resolve the disputes, border disputes, and ensure peace. Telephone lines were gradually opened, and people from this part of the country randomly called this part of the country numbers and said hello in general, just to ensure that it symbolizes peace. So this person, Abiy Ahmed, is credited with ensuring peace in the neighboring country of Eritrea. The border dispute was amicably resolved. Let's move to the next question then. Which of the following won the People's Choice Award? Not much to discuss here. Answer is in front of you. Answer is option second, Spirit of Kerala. Let's move on to the next question. Which of the following countries is our party to the 14th edition of the Joint Military Training Exercise named Nomadic Elephant 14? 14 is in Roman numeric here. Answer is highlighted. It is India and Mongolia. So what are the other important joint military exercises that you need to be aware of? So I want you to make a note here. Please write down. Make 2 columns. First column should be about the exercise, and the second column, name of the exercise, and the second column should be about the countries involved. Obviously, we'll take up countries that relate to India only. So first column heading is the name of the exercise. The second is countries. So write down Varun or Varuna, Varuna. So the exercise Varun is between India and France. Exercise Varun is between India and France. Then write down the next exercise Malabar, Malabar, Malabar. This is a trilateral naval exercise. What do you mean trilateral? 3 countries would be involved. So trilateral naval exercise between which 3 countries? Obviously one is India, Japan and US. Name is Malabar. India, Japan and US. India, Japan and US. The next exercise is Simbex, Simbex. Simbex is between Singapore and India. Simbex is between Singapore and India. Then write down the next exercise. We have Maitri. It typically means dosti. Maitri. So Maitri is an exercise between India and Thailand. Maitri. Maitre. Maitri between India and Thailand. Then you have the exercise called Indra. Indra. Indra between India and Russia. Indra between India and Russia. Then you have Slinex. Slinex. Slinex between India and Sri Lanka. Slinex between India and Sri Lanka. Then you have Gimex. 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 Can you guess? If Slinex was between India and Sri Lanka, Gimex should be between India and Japan. Gimex, India and Japan. Then you have the Garud Shakti. Garuda. Garud Shakti. This is between India and Indonesia. India and Indonesia. Then write down Sahyog between India and South Korea. Garud Shakti was between India and Indonesia. Then you have Sahyog, Sahyog, Sahyog between India and South Korea. South Korea. Given the current tensions between India and China, is there an exercise, joint exercise between India and China? Yes. It was conducted last year, called as Hand in Hand. Hand in Hand. India and China, hand in hand. Fine. Let's move on to the next question then. The Indian passport has been ranked. Answer is in front of you. 84th in the 2020 Global Passport Index. So, very quick information. What do you mean by this Global Passport Index? It basically ranks countries with regards to if you hold that particular country's passport, then in how many countries can you, or in how many destinations can you visit visa free? Now, what do you mean visa free? You wouldn't require a visa to enter a particular country? No, you will not require a visa, but you will get visa on arrival. Suppose there is a process of visa on arrival in Singapore. So, if you have an Indian passport, you go to Singapore, you can get the visa on arrival in Singapore. So, that is called visa on arrival. So, if a particular country's passport has access to visa on arrival in a lot of countries, then it will be considered a strong passport and would be ranked better. And if only limited countries allow visa on arrival, then it would be ranked a poorer passport. So India's rank is 84th among almost 199 countries or member states for which this survey was conducted. So which particular country has topped the list? Answer is Japan. So if you have a Japanese passport, then Japanese person holding Japanese passport can travel to 191 destinations without visa. 191 destinations without visa. Next is Singapore, 190 destinations. And which is the worst country in terms of passport index? It is Afghanistan. Afghanistan. You can only travel to what, 26 odd countries visa free. 26 is still already a big number, I feel. So if you hold a Afghani passport, you can get visa on arrival in 26 destinations. Remember, India's rank is 84. It has slipped down by 2 notches. In the 2019 ranking, it was 82nd. In the 2019 ranking, it was 82nd. Let's move on to the next question then. Kais Saied, who was in news, has won the presidential elections of. Answer is option 2, Tunisia. Kais Saied is, remember the name, president of Tunisia. Happened in 2019. Let's move on to the next question. Which country hosted the 2019 Busan International Film Festival? Busan is one of the famous cities in South Korea. So capital of South Korea is not Busan. Capital is Seoul. Seoul. And this particular place, Busan, is the second most important city in South Korea. So this festival occurs in this particular city of Busan, called as the Busan International Film Festival. Fine. There's also a famous movie, Train to Busan, but it has nothing to do with this particular question. In general, it is a good idea to remember names through movies as well. So Busan, Train to Busan is a pretty famous movie based on zombies, considered as horror. Anyways, let's move on to the next question. Which of the following categories of bank credit appear in scheduled bank statements of position that are published by the RBI? Now, answer is in front of you. Answer is all the 5 options: loans, cash credits and overdraft, inland bills purchased, discounted, foreign bills purchased and discounted. You can remember these 5 pieces of information. They are a part of the bank credit, but I will want to spend some time on trying to explain to you what do they mean. So loans, cash credits and overdrafts are easy to understand. When you say inland bills or foreign bills, bills here refer to bills of exchange. Bills of exchange. So let us very quickly understand what you mean by bills of exchange. Suppose there is a buyer and there is a seller, and they enter into a transaction with regards to selling of some goods, and they enter into a sales contract. Suppose there is a buyer in Mumbai and there is a seller in Bangalore. So the seller in Bangalore sells the goods to a buyer in Mumbai, and they agree to a sales contract where the buyer agrees to pay for the goods after 1 month, 30 days. The seller is willing to sell after agreeing that he will get the payment after 1 month. And in the sales contract, there's something called as bill of exchange, where the buyer has given this promise via his own bank that he is liable to pay the amount after 1 month. So there is effectively a guarantee of sorts that the seller is going to get money in 30 days time. Now there are three things that the seller can do. One obviously is wait for 30 days to get his payment. He'll anyways get the payment in 30 days, so wait for 30 days. The other thing is, in businesses typically you will want cash to be earned as quickly as possible so that you can use this cash to produce more goods so that you can sell them too. Why wait for 30 days? But the contract says that you'll get the payment in 30 days. So what he can do, the bill of exchange that he has got in that contract, he can present this bill of exchange to his own bank saying that the bank can get the money in 30 days and he would want to discount it today. Now we have used the term discount, which would mean that once he submits the bills of exchange to the bank will give him a particular amount, discounting certain percentage value or an absolute value as the case may be. For example, if the seller had entered into a transaction of 1 lakh rupees, 1 lakh rupees that he is about to get paid in 30 days, then he'll take this bill of exchange to his bank and ask the bank to pay him, let's assume, a value of 99,000 today itself. This is called as discounting of bills. This is called as discounting of bills. So why will he prefer 99,000 today? Why will not he want 1 lakh after 30 days? Because he'll get that 99,000 today, which he can use in his own business for the next 30 days. He can consider this 1,000 as a fee or an interest payment for that amount of 1 lakh that he is getting today for use for the next 1 month. So this process is called as discounting of bills. The other way is purchase. So what do you mean bills purchase? He will go to the bank and he will keep this bill of exchange as a collateral and he will borrow a loan. He will buy a loan. So if the bank gives an advance or a loan with taking collateral as a bill of exchange, this is called as inland. This is called as bills purchased. So two simple things. Discounting of bills would mean that bank will take the bill. Why will the bank take bill of exchange? Because bank is sure to get the money after 30 days from the buyer. So buyer in Mumbai will pay the bank directly after 30 days. Bank is happy because bank is earning that 1,000 commission on a amount of 99,000. The seller is happy because seller is getting 99,000 today. The buyer has no role to play. He is any which way is going to pay either the bank or the seller. Now, what do you mean by inland and foreign bills? So, when both the buyer and the seller and the transactions happen in a particular country, they are called as inland bills. For example, in our case, both the locations are Mumbai and Bangalore, where inside India, and therefore we'll say it is called an inland bill. What is a foreign bill? When one destination is one particular country and the other destination or transaction is another country, then it is called a foreign bill. Simple terms, all these terms are part of the categories that appear in the Scheduled Bank Statements of Possession in India, published by the RBI. Let's move on to the next question. Who among the following has been elected as the new president of the New Development Bank? So answer is Marcos Trojo. Marcos Trojo from Brazil. Previous president was Mr. K.V. Kamath. This New Development Bank is an alternative bank established in 2015 as an alternative to World Bank. So K.V. Kamath was the first president. Current president is slated to take over in July. So till June he is still the president, but this person will take over in July. Marcos Trojo is from Brazil. And what other information do you need to know about New Development Bank? Its headquarters are in Shanghai. Please write it down. Headquarters in Shanghai. And we have discussed K.V. Kamath. He was the first president. Jerome Powell is the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Jerome Powell is the chairman of Federal Reserve. Richard Clarida is the vice chairman of the Federal Reserve. What is Federal Reserve? Federal Reserve is an equivalent of the Reserve Bank of India. So you can consider it as a Central Bank of United States. Central Bank of United States, equivalent to RBI in India. Federal Reserve Chairman is Jerome Powell and Vice Chairman is Richard Clarida. Then Kristalina Georgieva, I hope it rings a bell in your mind. We have already covered this in the first question, I believe. The Managing Director of IMF. Let's quickly move on to the next question. Which of the following exchanges has launched AgriDex? Answer is in front of you. It is NCDEX. Just remember the full forms of these exchanges. These are all commodity exchanges in India. What do you mean commodity exchanges? Actual commodities like gold, silver, or agri commodities, their trade takes place. So online trading happens. There are two options: either you can take a physical delivery, or it can just be a notional trading where there is no physical delivery, only buying and selling of notional trades happen. So the first is Multi Commodity Exchange (MCX). Just remember the full forms: Multi Commodity Exchange. It is the largest commodity exchange in India. The second largest is NCDEX. The second largest is NCDEX. Full form is National Commodity and Derivatives Exchange. National Commodity and Derivatives Exchange. The third is Indian Commodity Exchange. So EX, wherever you see X, it's very easy to remember. It is exchange. I refers to Indian. C refers to commodity. So it was National Commodities and Derivative Exchange. This is Indian Commodity Exchange. What is NMC? NMC was the National Commodity. This was founded in 2002, and it is now merged with ICEX. So it was also a commodity exchange, multi-commodity exchange, where different commodities could be exchanged. Not very sure about the full form. Maybe you can browse it. Not very important now, because any which ways it is merged with ICX. So these are the three leading commodity exchanges in India. MCX is the largest, NCDX is the second largest, ICX after merger with NMC is the third largest commodity exchange in India. Let's move on to the next question. Which of the following companies has launched the first open cloud exchange in India? Answer is in front of you: GPX India Private Limited. Not much to discuss here. Let's move on to the next question. See, wherever there is some bit of information which requires some conceptual understanding, I'll prefer to spend time. But if it's a straightforward question where you are just expected to know the answer and move on, will not waste a lot of time. So next question is, which of the following is a trade body of private builders in India? Please remember this. It is CREDAI. Full form, please write down: Confederation of Real Estate Developers Association of India. I'll repeat and go slightly slow. Confederation of Real Estate Developers Association of India. I'll again repeat, don't worry. Confederation of Real Estate Confederation of Real Estate Developers Association of India. Fine. Now, the second organization full form is Society for Cardiovascular Angiography and Interventions. It's a medical body. Angiography is when there's a blockage in the veins of your heart. So no need to go this much technical here. SCI is Society for Cardiovascular Angiography and Interventions. In fact, I'll suggest forget this full form, not required. CAIT is very important. It is the Confederation of All India Traders. Please write this down. It is in news recently for a number of reasons. Initially, it wanted BCCI to cancel the sponsorship of Vivo because Vivo is a Chinese brand. So, Confederation of All India Traders, Confederation of All India Traders, and now, after the face off with China, even more, it has now urged the Minister of Commerce, Mr. Piyush Goyal, to compulsorily have country of origin prominently displayed in all the goods. So this Confederation of All India Traders body has requested Mr. Piyush Goyal to mandate it that it will become compulsory for all companies to have country of origin prominently displayed. So a lot of times we are not really sure whether a particular product is of Chinese origin or not. Sometimes when we read all the directions or expiry and manufacturing, we come to know, okay, made in Japan or made in China or made in Vietnam. So this has to be prominently displayed, the country of origin. This is the request by the Confederation of All India Traders. The last option is Cellular Operators Association of India. Cellular Operators Association of India. Fine. Let's move on to the next question. Not much to discuss here. Mr. Sumit Kumar Pohan, he is a representative from Tata Steel Limited. Tata Steel Limited. Quickly move on to the next question. Who among the following has been appointed as the Chief Executive and Managing Director of the IT Services Major Wipro? Answer is highlighted: Thierry Delaporte. Thierry Delaporte. Now he will take over from this person in option 1. Abid Ali Z Neemachwala. Abid Ali Z Neemachwala. He was the previous Chief Executive Officer and MD, and this person Thierry Delaporte, he will take over as the CEO now. This person Rishad Premji is the son of Azim Premji, and he is now the chairman of the board. So a lot of people still consider Azim Premji as the chairman. Rishad Premji has taken over last July. Rishad Premji. Jaxi Shah, in the previous slide we covered CREDAI. He is the president of CREDAI. Jaxi Shah is the president of CREDAI. And this last option, Mr. Raghu Menon, is the CEO of the Shapoorji Pallonji Group company, Sterling and Wilson. Sterling and Wilson. So he's the CEO of Sterling and Wilson, a company of Shapoorji and Pallonji Group. So I believe this was the last question that we had to discuss. I hope you have thoroughly enjoyed the concepts, you've understood them. Make sure that you revise the notes, and if required, please go through this video again. All the best from my side.